Thank you so much, musicians. All right, and now we know what it's time for. It's time for our message. And today it's our wonderful, 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 energetic, profound Reverend Beverley.
As the sun rose, a dewdrop became aware of its surroundings. There it sat on a leaf, catching the sunlight and throwing it back. Proud of its simple beauty, it was very content. Around it were other dewdrops, some on the same leaf and some on other leaves round about. The dewdrop was sure it was the best, the most special dewdrop of them all. Ah, it was good to be a dewdrop. The wind rose and the plant began to shake, tipping the leaf. Terror gripped the dewdrop as gravity pulled it towards the edge of the leaf, towards the unknown. Why? Why was this happening? Things were comfortable, things were safe. Why did they have to change? Why? The dewdrop reached the edge of the leaf. It was terrified, certain that it would be smashed into 1,000 pieces below, sure that this was the end. The day had only just begun, and the end had come so quickly. It seemed so unfair. It seemed so meaningless. It tried desperately to do whatever it could to cling to the leaf, but it was no use. Finally, it let go, surrendering to the pull of gravity. Down, down it fell. Below there seemed to be a mirror. A reflection of itself seemed to be coming up to meet the dewdrop. Closer and closer they came, and together they until finally. And then the fear transformed into deep joy as the tiny dewdrop merged with the vastness that was the pond. Now the dewdrop was no more, but it was not destroyed. It had become one with the whole. That was a beautiful story from Peter Hughes. Profound. So good morning. I am Reverend Beverley Strutt. I am the assistant minister here at Centers for Spiritual Living East Hawaii, and I can't tell you how wonderful it is to stand up here with all of you here today. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And for all of those that are here for the first time, I'd like to extend my welcome to you. We always want to say that if the message today and the atmosphere resonates with you, welcome home. So thank you for being here. I also want to just speak a word for our beautiful Reverend Kathy Huff, who today is feeling a tad under the weather. So let's turn to the camera behind us and wave at Reverend Kathy, because I know that she is watching us with great zeal and is delighted to be part of our online team and service. Yes, thank you, Reverend Kathy, for always bringing this community together. So, the winds of change, that's our topic for today. When I think of that, all I can say is the year 2020. Pretty much, that's what it's all about. However, change is an interesting thing. We tend to fight it. We tend to resist it. And yet, it's the most inevitable, the thing we are assured about. It always happens. I mean, even if you think of it, 98% of the atoms in our body will be replaced yearly. 98% of the atoms. Cells, our skin, are replaced every 2 to 3 weeks. Goodness. Can you imagine if we were resisting change? We'd be walking around with all the stuff just attached to us. I mean, come on. You know, we do everything. We do scrubs, we do everything to get the change going. And yes, we still are in resistance. You see, change is just really an evolution. If we can look at that word evolution as opposed to change, we do so much better with it. I love it. George Carlin said, I put $1 in the change machine and nothing changed. Come on. He kind of says it all. But you know, when we look at the river, we can see change, but we see it more as an evolution. You know, Heraclitus, he was one of the philosophers from around 500 BCE. We have some fragments of his work. And he said this, he goes, we never step into the same river twice. We think we might, it looks the same, but it's always changing, always evolving. And Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, he writes this, he goes, our lives and experiences may very well be likened to the river. If we stand on the bank of a river and watch it flow by, we become aware of the fact that the river never changes, but that its content is always new. By analogy, we might say the purposeful, dynamic quality of life within us never changes, but the content of our experience of living never remains the same. We can try. Man, we can hold on to that content as much as we want. You know, it's like holding on to that edge of the river. It's difficult. It's hard. We resist, but we want to so badly hold on to what we know. We don't want to think of anything changing, and yet the nature of it is that it does change. And when we jump in all the way, damn, it feels good. It just feels so much lighter. You know, the other day I was at Richardson's Bay. Yeah, I went down, I pitched my umbrella. I was having a grand time. And I was watching as everybody started to get into the water, and you know how it is there. There's lots of rocks, there's a little path of sand that we can walk down into the water, but mostly as we're walking in, we're navigating the roughness of the rock, right? So I was watching a couple of rather young ones. They were maybe in their 10, 11, 12, that they were getting on their flippers because they were going to go snorkeling. If any of you have ever tried to put your flippers on in the first part of Richardson's Bay, it's impossible. It just doesn't work. First of all, you're trying to sit while the waves are breaking. You've got all the sand getting into your flippers. So you try and walk, you're trying to get them out, you're falling. It's just not working. However, if you take 3 more steps deeper in and you go to where you're fully supported with the water, it's a breeze. So why hold on to the rocks? Why hold on to that edge? Dive into the change. You know, it's there where we can actually feel supported and feel what it's truly about. It's there where we can pull our flippers on and not have all the sand and that roughness be in it. And then from there, guess what we see? The wonderment of what can be. You know, sometimes, though, it's not so much the actual stuff around us that we need to change, but our perception of what change truly is. Are we going to be a victim to change, or are we going to be an adventurekant? Now, if anybody doesn't know what adventurekant is, just look at this. I'm an adventurekant. I'm the one that got on a plane and just flew out of South Africa to the south of France with the belief that there was a job for me. There was. But I was willing to step into change. I was willing to go into the unknown where I had no clue what there was going to be. Well, pretty much I did it again when I came here. And look at you guys. Man, I'm lucky. I'm the luckiest person in this world that I know. But you know what? I was willing to let go of the control about how things should be or how I perceived they should be. You know, it was my choice. It was my choice to be willing to see and experience something different from what I already knew. My ego didn't like it, though. Now, let me be very specific about when I speak about ego. I'm not talking about that prideful ego of like, oh, I'm a big fish in a small pond. No, not at all. When I speak about the ego, I speak about the ego from the point of view of that part of us inside of us that doesn't want us to kill ourselves, wants to keep us alive. See, what the ego does is the ego assimilates all this information, brings it together, and if we go in somewhere we've never been before, it's going to try and collect as much information as it can to take it with us to protect us. And if we've already done something, it's going to remember all of that, and next time we go, it's going to take that information with. If we want to try something different and new, what does the ego do? No, don't do it. It's not safe out there. Come on, look at all the other people out there doing wondrous things. Of course it's safe, but it is the ego's job to try and protect us. So we kind of listen to it a little bit. Yeah, not at all, not at all. So, but what we do is we open our eyes and we just look at what it is we're doing, and we don't try and kill ourselves. You know, we don't listen to the ego completely. We say, I hear you, I do not agree with you, and I'm going to do it anyway. So it's great. Yeah, let's hear it for the ego. Whoa. You know, Dr. Ernest Holmes, he says this, there are going to be changes in our lives from hour to hour and day to day, and we cannot escape them. It is the nature of the universe. So let us accept change, make the most of it, and capitalize on it. You see, that statement, capitalize on it, that's where I live. I live in the place where we capitalize on change. We see it and we go further. He goes on to say, the action of the law never changes, but the direction of the action is always up to us. So we get to choose. We get to choose. Life can become a glorious adventure, increasingly filled with more of every good thing as we gradually or suddenly come to change our pattern of thinking so that it embraces more of those good things. Who doesn't want more of those good things? Can you imagine what we'd be missing out on if we listened to that ego? Don't do it. Yeah, no, not so much. So we get to choose not just what we do, we get to choose how we respond. Do we want to experience this with resistance or awe? Let me hear it for resistance. Anybody? Yeah, I didn't think so. How about awe? I see awe. Yes, I love it. Because it's just, you know, we want to go there. We are creatures that want to experience. We want to stretch. We want to fly. We want to do these things, so we get to. Yes. So, you know, when we look at ourselves as we move through our own resistance to change, we can see how we reflect this out into the world. I mean, how often do you hear somebody saying, well, I think I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait and see how it works out. I'm going to wait and see how they do. I'm going to wait, and then I'll decide. Well, you know who you'll be watching to see? Me. I'm going to be out there. I jump right into the middle of that river because there is a knowingness for me that nothing in this universe, nothing on this planet, nothing in this world is against me. Nothing is. The universe is conspiring every single minute for our good. So why would something out there that's presenting itself as beautiful, as inviting, why would it be against me? The only thing that is against me is my perception of what it is, my desire to control how it should be, as opposed to being open to the awe of what it could be, the potentiality. So when we look at the winds of change around us, There's so much that has changed over this last year. So much. It's been like an e-ticket ride, no doubt. I remember one time I went to Disneyland in the rain. Brilliant. There were no people. There was nobody there. I wore a slicker, and we were on. It was great. We were going over a Space Mountain, right? And you know Space Mountain, you have to wait forever to get to the ride. You go down this road, and then you swing back, and then you go back, and you go back, and eventually you get to the ride. Not when it's raining. No, there are no lines. So you get on. They made us walk all the way back around before we could go again, and again, and again. And you know what? It was just the most brilliant idea that we could just make the choice to do it over and over and over again until we were really done. It seemed like last year, though, we were thrown onto that e-ticket ride over and over again, and not always by choice. Some of what we experienced during the pandemic was less than what we wanted to. It wasn't just about the change, it was about the way everything affected us on a personal level, on an emotional level. We lost so much, so many people. But you know, in it all, there was a magnificence that came about. I always speak about creativity. There was so much that we got from it. Can we see it? Can we see the potential in the chaos that we experienced last year? I think we can. And I think we're seeing it come forth even more right now. But you know, even more than that, as the pandemic blew through us, and that nature was asking for change in every which way, there was more change to come. And through the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement, we started to look at where else did we need to change. Where else did we need to put our attention? Where else did we need to heal? That was another e-ticket ride. And for a lot of us, we chose to get on that ride because it was a ride that was worth getting onto over and over again. But more importantly, what happened through last year was that our awareness changed. Our awareness to the interconnectedness of all life. How our thoughts and our actions and our words affect everybody around us. Therein lies the greatest change that I saw happening last year, was our awareness. We had to reach out. We couldn't just stay in our little bubble and have everything come to us, although it appeared to be that way. It appeared to be that we hunkered down and we got thin and close, but we were reaching out in a greater way than we've ever known before. We realized how connected we all are, how important each and every person on this planet is. Because each person is unique. Each person has to be doing what they do in order for everything else to happen. Try and get a cup of coffee by yourself. Think about that. It's great, sure. I can make myself a cup of coffee, but what does it take and who did it take to get that coffee into my cup? I couldn't even begin. And one day I tried to trace it back, just to put the pieces together and look at it. No. Everybody, millions of people for that one cup of coffee. Therein is a very, very superficial but profound example of the interconnectedness of all life. And that's just a cup of coffee. But change does happen, and our awareness does bring that. And Dr. Ernest Holmes says this: we do not change all of the patterns of our thoughts in a moment. Rather, it takes place little by little, until gradually the old thought patterns become transformed into new ones by some inner alchemy of the mind, the operation of which we do not see, but the manifestation of which we do experience. Much like the wind. We don't see the wind, but we sure do see the manifestation of it, the outpicturing of what it does. Therein lies the change, the gradual change that comes through our awareness. And when we look at the global vision statement for Centers for Spiritual Living, this is something that really truly speaks to me. We envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. To further the emerging global consciousness. We've seen that happen over the last year. We've seen us come together in all of these areas to bring forth and to support this emerging consciousness. It's been a paradigm shift, and know it. We are in it. It is happening. You can fasten your seatbelts or you can jump into the river, but it is happening. So that awareness that I speak about is your guide. Lean into what you know. Lean in to that greater awareness of potentiality moving forward. You know, one of the things that came up in the last couple of weeks, and part of it came from the Ministers' Listserv. Now, the Ministers' Listserv is this email account, this thread, that connects all the ministers of Centers for Spiritual Living. It's insane. I got to tell you. You can't get ministers to shut up ever. And give them an email address? Oh, my heavens. However, I will tell you, this last week, there was a wonderful discussion that came up, and it was all around imagery that is no longer appropriate, that no longer speaks to the awareness and the interconnectedness that we feel that is showing up in our books. Now, it's always been there. Don't get me wrong. These are books that we use in CSL for our accredited classes. Yes, many of them were written back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and it was a very, very different time. And yes, they are historical books. And yes, they have tremendous amount of profound, wonderful writing in them. But at the same time, there is stuff that we no longer align ourselves with. What do? We also can see Dr. Seuss's company very recently just took 6 books out of print because they said these books portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong. There's a greater awareness around all of this. Now, will those books be burnt? Goodness, I sincerely hope not. These are books that should be maintained, they should be looked at, that should be seen for where they were, when they were written, how they were written, and how far we have come from that time and how we see now. I am not going to make judgment on anybody's opinion on what these books should be or how they should be or what we should do about them. But what I do think, especially when we go into our classes, that we bring with us a sensitivity about the people with us in our class. And people will say, well, you know what? We should just case it. We should speak about when it was written, how it was written, that it's no longer what we think, and that should be fine, and then we should just move forward with reading. And that is a valid opinion, and for some that can work. But here's one thing I'm going to tell you. I speak from a place of white privilege. It's just what it is. By the color of my skin and the way I was raised, I come from that point. And there is no way that I can possibly imagine what it must feel like to sit in a class of my peers and hear the words in a book that berate me or put me down for the color of my skin or for my religious belief. It's not an option. For me, personally, it's not an option. And I am very pleased to hear that for Centers for Spiritual Living, all of these books are being looked at, are being revised, and are being considered for their historical value, and yet at the same time, we might be putting them on the back shelf because it's no longer appropriate. This is the wind of change that is blowing through the very organization that we are a part of. And I, for one, say I am extremely grateful to see the change of perception as we move forward. Absolutely. So what are we called to do? What are we called to do as we've worked through the change in ourselves and see how change is happening out in the world? What is it ours to do? You know, sometimes it can be very difficult to navigate these changes that we encounter in the world today. We're asked to rethink, reevaluate, make the right decisions, sometimes in an instant, on a dime. But you know what? I find it inspiring. I just find it so inspiring to be challenged by these decisions. We're called to a higher consciousness, a greater ideal, a more expanded awareness around life and living. And all we have to do, truly, all we have to do is be willing to embrace the life-affirming changes that we are experiencing. I love it. Rumi says this, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I want to change myself. Yes. So when we feel the wind, when we step into the river, when we let go of resistance against that which is unfamiliar, when we recognize that which is life-affirming and then choose it, is when we do not hinder the flow of the divine through us. And we become beneficial presences of the divine in this world right here, right now. So my invitation for you today is to look first for the good. No matter what comes your way, see the good. There's always going to be good in it, no matter how chaotic or miserable it might look. Look deeper, find the good, see the potential, evaluate it, and then choose it, especially if it's life-affirming. So I'd like to close with a little word from our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes. I am one with perfect action. Everything I do, say, or think is quickened into action through this understanding and this correct knowing. The harmonious action of the great whole operates through me now and at all times. I am carried along by this right action and am compelled to do the right thing at the right time. There is nothing in me that can hinder this action from flowing through me. There is nothing in me that can hinder this action if I allow it to flow through me. He goes on to say, I serve the world. I wait upon the Spirit within all humanity. I call forth glory from on high through the minds of all people. I am guided by the will of Spirit that inhabits eternity. I do the works of Spirit. The Spirit within me commands me. I do good to all peoples and all living things. So therein is our invitation, is to step in, to be that beneficial presence, to do good to all people and all living things. Thank you. Let's anchor this in prayer. So in this moment and in this time, I recognize the oneness, the wholeness that is all humanity. Seeing the interconnectedness of all life in all that we do, in all that we think, in all that we feel, and all that we experience. It is in this moment and in this time that we are called to step forward, to be that light, the light of spirit that shines forth from us and out into the world. And I know that as we do this, we feel a lightness. We feel that dewdrop of who we are blending with the greater pond. We feel that wonderful light that shines forth. And as we look into each other's eyes, there is that same reflection coming back at us. So I know for each one of us as we walk our path today that this is our truth. This is how we see the world, with open hearts, open minds, and we embrace it all. We embrace it with the love that we know that resides as the divine in all of us. And I call that good. So I just release this prayer into universal action of law, knowing that Spirit has said, yes, my beloveds, yes. You've set your intentions, you've expressed your desires, and it is already done. And we claim this together by saying, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you.